Because the moment you cut contact and stay gone, something in their mind snaps. Not emotionally, psychologically. You've removed their mirror. And narcissists don't function without reflection. They don't move on the way healthy people do. They react, they spiral, they calculate, and what happens next follows a very predictable pattern. If this is resonating, pause for a second, subscribe, because understanding this psychology is how you stay free, not reactive. When long no contact begins, the narcissist does not experience it as loss in the emotional sense most people imagine. There is no healthy grief, no genuine heartbreak, no reflective sadness about what went wrong. What gets triggered instead is something far more destabilizing: loss of control. Control is the core currency of a narcissist's psychology. Attention, reactions, emotional access, even conflict are all forms of supply that confirm their relevance and dominance. When you remove yourself completely and stay silent, you don't just leave the relationship, you collapse the system that kept them regulated. Your absence creates a sudden power vacuum. They can't read you, provoke you, correct the narrative, or extract reassurance from your reactions. That silence becomes an unsolvable problem. In the early phase, their mind searches for familiar levers. They replay past interactions, not to understand feelings, but to locate influence points. This is why no contact feels so jarring to them. They are used to pressing a button and getting a response. Silence offers no feedback. The brain of a narcissist is wired around external validation, so when that feedback loop disappears, anxiety spikes. That anxiety quickly converts into irritation and then into rage, because rage feels more powerful than helplessness. What looks like missing you from the outside is actually frustration at losing access. They don't miss your presence. They miss your availability. They miss knowing they can still affect you. This is why they may test boundaries with indirect actions like watching, asking others about you, or making symbolic gestures meant to provoke curiosity or guilt. Each attempt is a probe, a way to see if control can be reestablished. The longer no contact lasts, the clearer the message becomes. They no longer have authority over your emotional world. That realization is deeply threatening to a narcissistic identity. Without control, their self-image destabilizes because they define themselves through impact on others. Your silence doesn't communicate anger or rejection. It communicates independence. And independence is the one thing a narcissist cannot tolerate, because it proves they are no longer central, no longer necessary, no longer in command. Silence feels like rejection to a narcissist because their sense of self is built almost entirely on external feedback. They do not carry a stable internal identity the way emotionally healthy people do. Instead, they regulate their self-worth through attention, reactions, validation, and emotional engagement from others. When you go no contact and stay silent, that stream abruptly shuts off. To a narcissist, silence is not neutral, it is not peaceful, it is interpreted as dismissal, abandonment, and humiliation all at once. In their mind, being ignored equals being devalued. Even negative attention feels better to them than none, because anger, confrontation, and drama still confirm significance. Silence, however, offers no proof that they matter. There is no emotional echo to orient themselves around. This creates a sharp internal discomfort because they are forced to face something they avoid at all costs: the possibility that they are no longer important in your world. What makes this worse is that narcissists are highly attuned to social hierarchy. They constantly scan for signs of dominance and submission. When you stop responding, explaining, defending, or reacting, the power dynamic flips. They are no longer choosing distance. Distance is being imposed on them. That loss of perceived status is experienced as rejection, even if you never said a word. This is why silence often provokes stronger reactions than confrontation. Arguments still allow them to feel engaged, superior, or influential. Silence removes the battlefield entirely. There is nothing to win, no role to play, no audience to perform for. Internally, this triggers shame, but shame is intolerable for a narcissist. So instead of processing it, they convert it into anger, contempt, or fantasies of retaliation. They may tell themselves you are immature, cruel, or weak for disappearing, but that narrative exists only to protect their ego. Beneath it is a deeper truth they cannot admit. Your silence proves they no longer control access to you. And for a narcissist, rejection is not about losing love, it is about losing relevance. Your lack of response becomes undeniable evidence that their presence is no longer required, and that realization cuts deeper than any insult ever could. After long no contact, narcissists often move through a predictable internal cycle of confusion, rage, and calculation. It doesn't always happen in a clean order, and it doesn't always show on the surface, but psychologically, the pattern is consistent. At first, confusion sets in because silence disrupts expectation. They are used to predictable reactions, even if those reactions are emotional, defensive, or angry. When none arrive, their mind struggles to process the absence of feedback. They keep waiting for the moment you break, reach out, or respond. When that moment doesn't come, uncertainty takes over. That confusion quickly hardens into rage. Rage is not always explosive or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, cold, and internal. What fuels it is the realization that they no longer control the narrative or your emotional state. They may feel insulted, disrespected, or challenged, even though no direct challenge occurred. The rage exists because silence forces them to confront helplessness, and helplessness is intolerable to their ego. Anger feels more powerful than vulnerability, so their mind chooses it automatically. Once rage stabilizes, calculation begins. This is where the narcissist shifts from emotional reaction to strategic thinking. They start asking themselves how to regain leverage, not how to repair the relationship. They consider different tactics based on what has worked before: charm, guilt, intimidation, triangulation, or playing the victim all become tools on the table. Every move is measured by one question: will this get a reaction? During this phase, they may appear calm or even indifferent on the outside, but internally they are running scenarios. Should they reach out directly or wait? Should they pretend they've moved on to provoke jealousy? Should they smear you to protect their image? Each option is evaluated for its ability to restore control or at least preserve their sense of superiority. If none of these strategies succeed, frustration deepens. They may retreat temporarily, telling themselves they are done, but this withdrawal is rarely about closure. It is about regrouping. The cycle can repeat if they sense even the smallest opening. Long no contact breaks this cycle not by defeating them, but by starving it. Without feedback, confusion has nowhere to go, rage has no target, and calculation becomes pointless. Ego injury is the real wound that gets exposed after long no contact, and it cuts far deeper than most people realize. A narcissist's ego is not confidence, strength, or self-belief. It is a fragile psychological structure built to protect them from shame. Everything they do, the charm, the control, the manipulation, The image management exists to prevent one unbearable feeling from surfacing, the feeling of being insignificant. When you go silent and stay gone, that protection cracks. No contact sends a message without words. It says, "You no longer define my emotional reality." To a narcissist, this feels like an attack on identity itself. Their self-image depends on being central, influential, unforgettable. When you remove yourself, they experience it as a collapse of status. They are no longer the authority, no longer the one who decides when connection begins or ends. That loss of dominance creates ego injury. Ego injury is not sadness. It is humiliation mixed with helplessness. The narcissist feels exposed, diminished, and replaced, even if no replacement exists. They begin to obsess over how they are being perceived. Are you happier? Have you forgotten them? Do others see through them now? These thoughts create internal chaos because their value system depends on external validation. Without your attention, their internal balance destabilizes. This injury often produces extreme reactions. Some narcissists lash out aggressively, attempting to reassert superiority through insults, threats, or smear campaigns. Others retreat into cold contempt, convincing themselves you were unworthy or beneath them. This is not indifference. It is psychological self-defense. They must downgrade you in their mind to survive the blow to their ego. What makes ego injury so dangerous for them is that it cannot be repaired internally. Healthy people process rejection by reflecting, adjusting, and growing. Narcissists cannot do this because admitting fault would shatter their false self. So instead of healing, they externalize blame. You become cruel, you become heartless, you become the problem. This allows them to protect their image while avoiding accountability. Long no contact keeps that injury open. Every day of silence reinforces the truth they cannot escape. You chose peace over them, and that choice proves they are not as powerful, necessary, or irreplaceable as they believed. That realization is the deepest wound of all. After long no contact, narcissists often shift into a phase of distant monitoring before they take any direct action. This stage is quiet, subtle, and easy to misunderstand. On the surface, it may look like they've moved on. In reality, they are watching, not out of care or nostalgia, but out of surveillance. Monitoring allows them to gather information without risking rejection or further ego injury. It gives them a sense of control without exposure. During this phase, they may check your social media obsessively, ask mutual connections, indirect questions, or track changes in your life through third parties. They are scanning for emotional data. Are you struggling or thriving? Do you seem happier or quieter? Are you talking about them or acting unaffected? Every detail is interpreted as evidence of whether they still matter. This observation phase helps them regulate their anxiety while they decide their next move. What's important to understand is that they are not looking for closure. They are looking for leverage. If they sense vulnerability, sadness, or lingering attachment, it reassures them that they still have influence. If they see growth, peace, or indifference, it unsettles them. Indifference is especially threatening because it suggests permanent loss of control. When they see no emotional signal, it forces them to confront the possibility that they are no longer relevant. This is why they often delay reaching out. Acting too soon risks confirmation that they've been replaced or forgotten. Waiting allows them to build a narrative in their head. They may tell themselves you are pretending to be fine or that you'll eventually break. These assumptions help them preserve superiority while they observe from a safe distance. Monitoring also serves another function, protecting their image. By staying quiet, they can later claim they were the one who disengaged, that they were unbothered, or that they chose distance for their own reasons. This narrative matters deeply to them, especially in social environments where reputation equals power. If they eventually act, it is usually calculated, not emotional. The move is based on what they think will produce the strongest reaction with the least risk. Long no contact disrupts this phase by offering no data. When there is nothing to observe, no emotional trail to follow, their monitoring becomes pointless. And when observation fails, control slips further away, leaving them frustrated, uncertain, and exposed. As time passes and no contact remains unbroken, hoovering attempts don't disappear, they evolve. Early attempts are often impulsive and obvious, driven by panic or irritation. But after long no contact, narcissists become more strategic. They learn that direct approaches may fail, so they adjust tactics to bypass your defenses without triggering immediate rejection. This is where their behavior can feel confusing, subtle, and even harmless on the surface. Strategic hoovering is designed to look low risk. Instead of emotional declarations, you may see neutral messages, practical questions, or accidental encounters. They might reference shared history casually, send something that appears unrelated, or show concern without commitment. The goal is not reconciliation. The goal is engagement. Any response, even a cold one, confirms access still exists. Once access is reestablished, control can slowly be rebuilt. Another common shift is indirect hoovering. They may use third parties to pass along information or create curiosity. Mutual connections might mention them out of nowhere, or you may hear that they are struggling, changing, or doing exceptionally well. These narratives are planted intentionally. They are meant to trigger empathy, guilt, jealousy, or self-doubt, emotions that reopen psychological doors without direct contact. Timing also becomes deliberate. They may wait for moments when you are more likely to be vulnerable, anniversaries, holidays, birthdays, or periods of visible stress or success. Success is just as triggering as hardship because it threatens their ego. Reaching out during these moments allows them to test whether they still hold emotional weight in your life. What makes long-term hoovering dangerous is that it often mimics maturity. They may appear calm, respectful, even self-aware. But this is not growth. It is adaptation. Narcissists learn patterns the way strategists do. If chaos no longer works, they try composure. If charm failed before, they try neutrality. The core motive remains unchanged: regain relevance and influence. If these refined tactics fail, frustration intensifies. Each unanswered attempt reinforces the same message no contact has been sending all along. Access is permanently revoked. At that point, hoovering either escalates into hostility or collapses into withdrawal. Long no contact is effective not because it changes them, but because it removes every incentive. When strategy yields no reward, even the most calculated attempts eventually lose momentum. When narcissists can no longer regain control after long no contact, they don't sit with the truth of what happened. They rewrite the story. This is not lying in the casual sense. It is psychological survival. Their mind cannot tolerate a narrative where they were rejected, powerless, or responsible for the collapse, so reality is edited until it no longer threatens